So hello everybody, today we are here for anthropology test 11 discussion, AST 11. So this is the second test in the tribal topic. Last test AST 10 was also on tribes and the next test 12 will also be on tribes. So in these three tests we will discuss different topics related to tribes. So the second test, the present test is mostly about the constitutional safeguards and various policy measures related to tribes. The first test dealt with tribal problems and tribal classification. This test is largely dealing with safeguards and policy related issues for tribals. And the next test will be about social change and the other miscellaneous issues related to tribes. So as I discussed in the last class, in tribes and paper 2 in general, the approach, the voice is not audible. Is the voice still not audible, please? Okay. Unmute Jayal Kadama. Right. I hope the voice is clear now. So, in paper 2 in general and tribes as a whole, framework is very, very important. So developing a framework and breaking down the answer into 3 to 4 dimensions is the key. Breaking down the answer into 3 to 4 dimensions is the key challenge to handle the paper, handle the questions. So please make sure you generate framework for every topic and substantiate your framework with good examples or good case studies. Substantiate them with good examples or good case studies. So we'll begin with the first question. The first question is about PISA 1996. Now for this also I shared a handout on the group. So if some of you need some basics of this, you can go through the handout. So what do you talk about when you're writing an answer on PISA? First, briefly make sure you write the background. There must be a brief background. Then there must be a discussion on the features of PISA and issues in implementing PISA, and finally some measures or way forward. And if possible, write some case study. That's all. This must be the framework. Substantiate this with case study and measures. This is the broad structure. So in background, please talk about the Panchayat Raj 73rd, 74th Amendment, and in that we have Article 243M. Article 243M says that the Panchayat Raj should be extended to 5th schedule areas also, and for that extent Dilip Singh Bhuria committee was constituted, and based on the Bhuria commission recommendations, PISA Act was enacted. This is the brief background, and the need for this is because Panchayat 5th schedule areas have different cultures and the tribes following different customary laws. So to reconcile them, we need a different legislation from what is followed in plain areas. Hence, a different Panchayat legislation was needed. That is the whole rationale. You cannot have the same Panchayat system and structure that we have for plain areas in tribal areas. So a separate legislation was needed. Then talk about features. In features, most of you missed the most important feature, that is Grama Sabha. Grama Sabha is constituted for the first time in this. And then second, all state legislations must be suitably amended to make them PISA, to be made PISA compliant. All of them must be made PISA compliant, and state laws must accommodate. All the state laws must accommodate tribal customary laws and traditional ways of land and forest management, and traditional ways of and fourth, it also provides 50% reservation for tribals in the councils. And then also discuss the Grama Sabha powers. Many of you did not discuss the powers of Grama Sabha, such as mandatory consultation for land acquisition. It is consultation, please. It is not consent. It only talks about mandatory consultation and mandatory recommendation in case of mining. For giving prospecting and mining leases, that is another power. And then Grama Sabha is also given some mandatory executive functions, such as approving development plans, giving utilization certificates, and taking up some developmental activities. It also has the rights over monitoring developmental activities like roads and all of this. And finally, it is also given control over minor forest produce. Please write MFP. MFP is a major issue. Grama Sabha should also have powers over MFP. And then discuss issues. Though this is a theory, in practice, none of these things have been implemented. In many places, Grama Sabha is not constituted. Where it is constituted, it is not consulted for projects. Here you can give the case study of Polavaram project. This is there in Kaka report. How for Polavaram, Grama Sabha was not consulted, and wherever consulted, the consultation was not free, it was forced. And for mining, they are ignored. MFP is still with Forest Department. And even for developmental functions, they are sidelined. Along with this, you also talk about other issues in the working of PISA. Because of PISA, PISA is also coming in conflict with traditional tribal political institutions. Tribes have a traditional political institution, and PISA is coming in conflict with their traditional institutions. And it is also elections are also leading to divisions in tribal society. Divisions and ruptures in tribal society. That is another issue. So a lot of these issues are discussed in the handout on the last page. In the last page, we have way forward. There we have discussed, there is a detailed discussion of all of these issues. So election is creating conflict with traditional tribal institutions, and PISA is not actually implemented in many states seriously. So that paper gives you the handout, talks about data of different states which have implemented PISA at different levels of merit. So all of this is the solution, and in way forward, propose that we have to go for prior free informed consent, replace consultation with PFIC, that is prior free informed consent. Consent should be there, not consultation, and extend PISA to more states. And ensure all the powers of PISA are given to Grama Sabha. All the important powers are given to Grama Sabha as has been prescribed here. That's all. So that is how you can talk about PISA, and wherever relevant, Kaka committee. So as I discussed in the last class, Kaka committee is very, very needed for us to quote and substantiate our answers. The second question deals with social change. in tribals people in post-independence period. So whenever we discuss social change, follow again what is the earlier tribal situation. Discuss what is the earlier tribal situation. How were tribals earlier? So earlier tribals were having subsistence economy. Tribals lived in subsistence economy, and kinship was very important. Living close to nature. They lived very close to nature, and they had traditional livelihood, forest-based traditional livelihood, highly superstitious, animistic, superstitious and highly animistic. So these are some of the earlier scenarios. Now what is the present change? Present change, and what factors cause this change? Factors like industrialization, market economy, urbanization, outsider entry, globalization, all these factors created present changes. And when you discuss change in terms of, first, how did the economy change? Because of the economy, how did their marriage, family change? What about kinship? How did kinship change? And what about the nature of society? How did the nature of society also get modified? And changes in religion, political system. So take syllabus in paper 1 as a reference to document these things. And along with this, 7, political system, religion, political system. Along with this, you also include changes to language and indigenous knowledge, etc. So these dimensions, write your content, organize your content along these dimensions. So marriage, for example, is today nuclear family is followed. Marriage is more of a contract, not a sacrament anymore. Kinship role has declined. From lineages and clans, they are living now in smaller groups. Society is now, inequalities have emerged. They have also developed classes and stratification from earlier egalitarian society. Religion, from being part of having their own animistic naturism and ancestor worship, now they are becoming part of major religions like Hinduism, Christianity. And religion also, the amount of superstition has declined, the amount of religion has declined. So just analyze changes in this framework. Having this framework itself will give you a lot of points. So take this framework. That is why you should know how to use paper 1 syllabus in paper 2 answers. So in tribes especially, whenever you discuss social change, please use paper 1 syllabus, and the ideas we discuss in paper 1 should be used here along these different lines. Political system. Earlier they used to have lineage, band, tribal system and traditional headman systems, but now increasingly they are becoming part of democratic system. And with laws like, now bring in PISA again, with laws like PISA, they also have panchayat system and Grama Sabha institutions to manage their resources, and customary law is being replaced by secular law like IPC. So write down these different things. Next, third, left-wing extremism and tribals. So again, for this brief background of what is left-wing extremism, most of you are not discussing reasons well. What I found is the discussion on reasons is very, very poor. So discuss the background and then discuss the reasons for left-wing extremism what is its reasons and nature, finally way forward. That's all. Here you can use your content for ANTHRO in internal security, or if you have good content in internal security, you can also use internal security content here again in ANTHRO. So it's a question of which content you can rope in and use in which context. So background and reasons. Talk about here background, what is left-wing extremism, inspired by ideas of Marx and started with Naxalbari as a Naxalbari uprising of peasant uprising against agrarian issue and exploitation of farmers. That's the basic point. And then reasons. What are the reasons for left-wing extremism? Primarily it is, here link it with land alienation, displacement, debt bondage, land alienation, displacement, debt bondage, and poverty, all the other problems of tribal people, lack of education, literacy, health. Each one you can back up with data that we discussed from last class. And non-tribals, entry of non-tribals into tribal area, and domination of non-tribals. And you can also link it, back it up with one moment, I think. And then you can back it up with how all of this is leading to loss of culture. So all of this should be part of your discussion, and then discuss the way forward. In way forward, we suggest, and also in nature, you can use Salva Judum case study, that in some states like Chhattisgarh, wrong models like Salva Judum were followed, where paramilitia, people-based paramilitia were used. People were used to fight against Naxals, and this led to human rights violations in Chhattisgarh. So such kind of wrong policies are also creating problems for reducing Naxalism. And then way forward, we have to suggest that Naxalism should not be seen as a security problem only. It must be seen as a developmental problem. The issue is about development. It must be seen as a development problem. That must be the approach. So the solution has to be two-pronged. One, we have to take law and order measures. At the same time, we also have to take up development measures. And this can be seen here. Discuss AP model. AP model, which was successful in reducing the Naxal footprint in the state, is based on this twin approach, where they created a special force called Greyhounds to deal with Naxals, and at the same time took up many development measures like building houses, laying roads, providing education, and mainstreaming them by arranging visits to Hyderabad, giving them livelihood, helping them with livelihood activities, and also novel initiatives like community policing. These were taken up to reduce alienation. So all of these measures helped in reducing alienation of people with the government, and as a result, slowly the support base for Naxals reduced. And along with this, they also made sure good, yes, PDS and all of that, resource management, traditional resource management like land, forests. These were protected and they were given some pattas, land pattas and their forest rights, because the whole problem lies with land pattas or land titles. So that is how we overcame this entire issue. Next question is assimilation and isolation debate. This is a very classic example. Assimilation and isolation debate deals with what should be the relationship between tribes and nation state. That is the whole issue. What should be the relationship between tribes and nation state? Here, two approaches were proposed. Or what should be the basis of tribal policy of the government? That is the whole issue, right? That is the whole issue here. So in this context, two approaches were proposed. One is called isolation. Another is assimilation. Isolation approach was proposed by Wherever Elvin. This was proposed by G.S. Gurye and other social workers. It was proposed by G.S. Gurye and other social workers. They proposed this approach. So what is the essence of Verrier Elvin's isolation approach? In this, Elvin is saying that this approach is also called as national park approach. It is also called as national park approach. So what is the essence of this approach? In this approach, he is saying that tribes must be kept away because non-tribal contact is dangerous. Non-tribal contact is harmful. It will lead to exploitation, loss of their culture and loss of their rights in land, etc. And here he gives the example of, compares Gonds with tribes of Arunachal. He says tribes of Arunachal are doing pretty well compared to Gonds. Gonds are facing indebtedness, land alienation, poverty, whereas tribes in Arunachal are free from all these problems. The reason is these are here outside contact is less. Here there is a lot of outside contact. So he comes to the conclusion that for tribes, outsiders are harmful, so they must be kept away. But of course, this approach has many disadvantages. First, because they are kept away from mainstream, they won't get benefits, mainstream benefits like health, education. They will suffer from technological backwardness. They will suffer from this, and it will also not help with national integration. And also create infrastructural backwardness in tribal areas. It will also create infrastructural backwardness in tribal areas. That is the problem. Then we have assimilation. Here they propose that no, G.S. Gurye believes that tribes are backward Hindus. That is, they are also part of rest of society. It is just that while others have progressed, these people have remained backward. So they are backward Hindus. Hence G.S. Gurye, his idea is that for national integration, tribes must be assimilated and must be brought into larger fold of Hinduism, because anyway at one point they were part of the same society, just that they have lagged behind because of, now you can use the ideas like cultural lag here. You can use ideas like cultural lag that was asked in this year's mains of Ogburn, and say because of cultural lag they are backward Hindus, hence the right solution is to help them join the mainstream as part of the society, and it is also good for national integration. But what are negatives of this approach? This can mean cultural loss. It can also mean integration, joining at the bottom of society. This can also lead to a lot of violence, deprivation, land alienation, and loss of identity. So that way this whole process can be very violent for tribes, because they're losing their individual tribal identity and they're forced to join society at a lower level. Hence, both are not correct. At the midway, we have integration. Talk about integration. And what is integration? Here, tribes can decide their own pace of change. They can decide they change at a pace that they like. And integration, where do you find the philosophy of integration? We find the philosophy of integration in Panchsheel. Panchsheel talks about tribal integration, and even the 5th and 6th schedule provisions, these are essentially based on the idea of integration. That is, we should give tribes space and freedom so that they are able to determine their future at a pace that they want. Integration means they choose both their future and the pace at which they are going to change. We are not going to impose outside this pace of change from outside. That is what we mean by integration. And Panchsheel, 5th and 6th schedule of constitution, all of these are based on the philosophy of integration. Next question is Patal Gadi movement. This is an example of tribal movement. So, just for any tribal movement, discuss the background, nature, causes, and remedies. What can be done to address this? So, the content is not new. What you must know about, I shared the entire article on Patal Gadi movement on the group. In fact, this article was written by Virginius Kaka himself. So, if you see this article, is Patal Gadi movement in tribal areas anti-constitutional? This entire article was written by Virginius Kaka himself. So, you can read this for a lot of details. I'll just summarize it. What is Patal Gadi? First, background. Where is it found? This started in Jharkhand, in Kunti district, and then spread to Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Bengal, Odisha, and it started in the Oraon tribe. So, what was the nature? Patal Gadi means erecting stones over tombs of the deceased. That is Patal Gadi. So, as part of this movement, tribal people began to erect stones on the outside of the village, where they began to write about their rights like Pisa and other things, and they were asking outsiders not to enter. So, stone slabs were erected at this traditional custom of the tribal society was taken, and based on this, stone slabs were erected at the outside of the village, and outsiders were being asked not to enter the village, and tribal rights under the constitution were written on the slab. Why did this movement happen? The primary reason for this movement is land alienation in Jharkhand, land alienation, displacement, and poverty. These are the economic causes, are the main reasons. And the immediate reason was that the British people put in place 2 special legislations for tribals of Chota Nagpur region and in Jharkhand especially. It's called Chota Nagpur Tenancy Act, and another is called Santal Parganas Tenancy Act, Chota Nagpur Tenancy Act 1908 and Santal Parganas Act 1949. So, these were put in place to protect tribal rights in land in this region. Because of this, special measures were given for tribes of Chodar Nagpur against tribal land rights, so that it is very difficult to take tribal land for development projects also. That was the issue. And to dilute this, Jharkhand government in 2017 passed two legislations. One is called Jharkhand Freedom of Religion Bill 2017. This was proposed. And amendments were also proposed to the 2013 Land Acquisition Act. And the idea was that Jharkhand government organized a Global Investor Summit. Jharkhand government organized Global Investor Summit in 2017 with the slogan Momentum Jharkhand. This was the thing. As part of this, government started land bank policy. They wanted to create a land bank for industries to get land easily. And to get this land easily, they began to dilute the tribal laws. Dilute the tribal laws like Santal Parganas Act and Chota Nagpur Tenancy Acts. These two tenancy acts were diluted so that tribal people can be given, land can be easily diverted to tribal people for development projects. Land bank policy for development projects. This was done. So that was done, and tribal people now fought against this through this movement. So just discuss all this and suggest remedies. Remedies should be, we have to make sure that land, all the measures we discuss for displacement and land alienation, you can write here. Land for land, traditional land acquisition must be minimized, and land acquisition can only be done based on 2013 Act and based through Gram Sabha consent, not through force. So, and tribals must be given a share in development through T and Singh formula. So, if all of those safeguards which we discussed for land acquisition and land alienation, if those are implemented, then these kind of issues will not repeat. So, just discuss that. Next, working of 5th and 6th schedule. This, surprisingly, many students wrote poorly. This is a very standard question. I think the problem was you did not know what to write and how to write. So, what's the basic theme for this question? First, you divide the answer into two areas. First is about 5th schedule. Second is about 6th schedule. First, 5th schedule. Discuss what are the provisions and where does it apply. Where and provisions. 6th schedule also provisions and where. And then issues as per Kaka committee. Same issues as per Kaka committee. So discuss the issues as per, I think, online students, can you hear? Please confirm. Yes. So I hope you can hear now. So discuss the issues as per Kaka committee, and finally conclude with reforms or suggestions. Again, as per Kaka committee, because the committee went into extensive details about how to improve the working of both 5th and 6th schedule. So, in provisions for 5th schedule, what will you write? Governor's powers, especially his powers to exempt 6th schedule, exempt application of normal laws by notification in tribal areas. So, through notification you can exempt, and his powers to issue regulations, his power to issue regulations in the matter of money lending, land delineation, land acquisition, etc. Next, along with governor's powers, we have TAC. Then we also have governor's report. These are the basic issues, and where this is mostly in central India, and that too I think we have this in around 10 states. Notably, missing states are Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal. These 4 states are not covered, but other peninsular India states are covered. And issues, all the issues listed here. First, whether governor's power is discretionary or not. Second, TAC is not constituted. Where it is constituted, it is not working with independence and autonomy. It is dominated by politicians. Governor's report is not submitted on time. It does not have meaningful analysis, and governor does not have resources to make this report. On the whole, 5th schedule, though in principle it has some protections, but in ground it has failed to live up to the expectations. That's it. Then 6th schedule. 6th schedule, where in the states of AMTM. And what does it do? Provisions. It creates autonomous districts and autonomous councils. So that key word has to be written. What does it do? Autonomous districts and autonomous councils. So councils have territorial constituencies where members are elected by elections, and councils have legislative functions. Then you also have a chief executive council which has executive functions along with legislative functions, where they take up developmental activities, and they also have financial independence. They have financial powers to levy taxes. Then you also have village councils for delivery of justice. Many did not write this. This is very important, please. Because of this, justice delivery here in these areas happens as per customary law. It doesn't happen as per IPC, CRPC. So, village councils for delivery of justice, and as a result, 6th schedule areas are like states within states, and we have around 10 autonomous councils across these 4 states working under 6th schedule. And discuss the issues. Issues are, they are not allowed to function by the state government. They dominate. Non-tribals are making sure they don't function, and councils are not given funds, functionaries, they are being dissolved, elections are not being held. So all the issues discussed by Kaka committee, and here also women are not represented in good numbers, and if there are multiple tribes like in Tripura, then numerically one tribe is dominating over other tribes. So numerically disadvantaged tribes are not finding representation here, and the council between 6th schedule areas and state governments. So discuss all those issues and say on the whole, 6th schedule has done better than 5th schedule. 5th is like a paternalistic, but 6th is actually participatory. So the way forward must be to extend 6th schedule to more areas which are coming under 5th schedule, and to extend 5th schedule to areas to states which have tribal population but no scheduled areas, like these 4 states. They have tribal areas but no tribal people but no scheduled areas. So these states must be brought under 5th schedule, and existing 5th schedule areas must come under 6th schedule. So extend the jurisdiction of 6th schedule. That is the recommendation they are making. That's it. So all these are discussed in detail in Kaka committee. Next is 7th question. This is actually relevant. This question is actually about caste, but I asked here because sometimes this question was being asked in tribal chapter also. So discuss the constitutional safeguards for scheduled caste. So all of you wrote the content well. It's just that you just listed just the entire constitutional safeguards, protective, developmental, mobilizational. So you categorize the safeguards into different categories and listed them in great detail, all the articles and different legislations like SC/ST Atrocities Act, Protection of Civil Rights Act. We talked about NC/SC, talked about Article 332, 338, reservation and SC Commission. All of those are okay, but that is not complete. Why I gave some answers only less marks like 6 is because you didn't write comprehensive framework. Comprehensive framework should be, first, what are the reasons for safeguards? Why do they need safeguards? Why do the scheduled castes need safeguards? Next, of course, you describe the existing safeguards. Then, issues in the working. Are they working fine? Or are there any issues? Way forward. What suggestions can you make to make them better? To talk about how NCSC is not doing well. So we have right to equality. We still have casteism. Though reservations are there, within SCs you have classes. So not all SCs are benefiting from reservation. So write all the issues, and despite all the acts, we still have caste violence, caste discrimination in different areas. So all the issues must be written, and how do you way forward, write the way forward. So instead of writing all the 4 dimensions, most of you wrote a single dimension, safeguards, just this, because that is what the question is asking for. So in paper 2, you have to see what are the aspects to the question that are not directly given in the question itself. You must learn to take the question and break it down into framework and touch all the angles. In paper 1, the framework is already known to you because you memorize concepts. But in paper 2, it's like essay. The framework has to be generated based on the question and its need. So you have to develop this kind of framework and write the answer. Next is 8th question. National tribal policy. Actually, this was a previous question, so I asked you, I gave it in the examination. There is no official tribal policy, so to speak of. We only have a draft tribal policy. Even I shared the handout of this draft policy also on the group. So, briefly discuss the background. The background is, in India, assimilation, isolation both were proposed, but we follow integration. Integration is specified in Panchashil. So discuss these issues and then mention that we have no formal official tribal policy. In India, there is no formal official tribal policy as of now. We don't have an formal official tribal policy as of now. So in the absence of a formal official tribal policy, things are very vague. So vagueness around the rights, measures, government measures towards tribals. To bridge this gap, we are proposing a tribal policy, but even this has been at a draft stage and is yet to be finalized. And then we talk about the draft tribal policy and the different measures in it. Like briefly discuss the different ideas different measures it is proposing in areas like education, in areas like health. How does it want to talk about displacement? How does it perceive land alienation? So in all these areas, there are a wide range of measures. Just capture all these measures, 2-3 points under each heading. How does it perceive shifting cultivation? And how does it look at IPR and tribal indigenous knowledge? And lastly, what talks about rights of PVTG and what it has to say about scheduled areas. So just discuss under each of this, there are different pointers mentioned in the policy. Just list down these different pointers to generate your comprehensive answer. That's it. So the policy I shared, nothing complex here. You just need to read the policy and take different measures and list them. And in the introduction, discuss these details that in India, two ideas were proposed, isolation, assimilation, but finally we have integration. This integration philosophy is found in Panchashil, but it is not expressed in terms of a official policy. So there is vagueness. Because of vagueness, government cannot be held accountable and no fixed set of demands can be made by tribals on the state. So to remove this vagueness and create a clear cut clarity on the approach of government, a policy has been proposed, and the policy proposes these different areas. Then limitations is a draft policy, so we have to take more action to finalize it. And here, if you want, you can add some recommendations also where the policy is not, where you feel it is not up to the mark, but it's quite comprehensive. So in fact, you can say the policy must be immediately passed and notified by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, so that, and the policy must be backed by some schemes for tribals, because policy itself doesn't give any rights, it's only an approach. Policy must be backed by schemes and acts. So as per the policy, we have to suitably amend PISA, FRA, 5th and 6th schedule and tribal subplan and launch new programs for tribal people like the just launched PVTG mission. So write all these points. The next question deals with nature of tribal movements with suitable examples. Here, first discuss what is the tribal movement. Tribal movement discuss definition for tribal movement and discuss how they are a part of social movements, how they are part of wider social movements, and list the reasons for these movements. What are the reasons for tribal movements? Again, all the same story: land, health, education, poverty, outsider contact, indebtedness. Here, especially in reasons, focus on the attack on culture. Attack on culture and the traditional way of life. That is one of the major concerns in this area. And then there are many classifications for tribal movements, but the classification that I like is proposed by Kaka. I shared the entire handout or research paper of this on the group. I think the printout is not there, Shiva. It is the handout is posted on the group, where Virginius Kaka breaks down tribal movements into 4 categories, both in pre-independence, post-independence. He calls some movements as Sanskritization movements. Then he calls some other movements as culture and identity based movements. Then land and forest based movements. And then autonomy movements. So these are the 4 different categories of movements that Virginius Kaka proposes in his work. So what are Sanskritization movements? These are movements which are created, which are taken up by tribal people because of outsider contact, and because of outsider contact they began to feel inferior. and because of outsider contact, they began to feel inferior. As a result, inferior, and this, along with this, their whole economic difficulties, like losing their land, being caught in debt trap, money lenders trapping them. So they were facing financial economic difficulties, they were facing cultural attack from outsiders. So under all this pressure, they thought they have to change their culture, they have to reform their culture, or they have to Sanskritize, they have to take up Sanskritization or cultural reform. That is, they must become like outsiders. And this cultural reform movement took different turns. Among Oraons, it was famous as the Tana Bhagat movement. The famous example of this is the Tana Bhagat movement among the Oraons. Among the Hos, it is called the Haribaba movement. Among Santals, it is called Sappho Hor movement, and in Gujarat it is called Devi movement. That is the essence of Sanskritization movement. Then culture and identity based movements. These movements here, this is about cultural revival. Here tribal people felt their present economic difficulties are not because it's because of outsider contact, and because of outsider contact they have lost their traditional culture. So to be able to do better in life, they must go back to their old and pristine ways of life. So this is about reviving their old culture. This is not about imitating outsiders. Sanskritization movement is about outsiders imitation. This is about reviving their old ways of life. That is culture and identity based movements. And what are the examples of this? The examples of this is among Hos, we have the Adi Samaj movement. Among Kasi, there is the Singh Kasi movement. Among the Nagas, we have the Zeliangrong movement. So these are some examples of culture and identity based movement. So here the idea is to go back to the original tribal way of life. So the whole idea is to revival of tribal culture. That is the rationale. Then third, we have land and forest based movements. These movements are arising because of displacement activities, development projects, etc. Here you can write so many. You have the Koel Karo struggle, Narmada Bachao Andolan, Niyamgiri movement, we have Chipko movement, even Patalgadi movement, and in extreme cases it has taken the form of Naxalism. All of these can, and in pre-independence era we had movements like the Bhumij revolt, the Kol rebellion, the Santal rebellion, the Munda rebellion. Yes, so all of these rebellions in the post-independence period. So the third movements took the form of, the third category of movements, they took the form of revolt or rebellion. It is not about reforming culture and all of that. They just revolted and attacked the established institutions to exact revenge and destroy them. Then the fourth is autonomy movements. These are seen more in Northeast, but not there only. For autonomy, there are different reasons. In fact, autonomy movements are actually linked to the next question, ethno-nationalism. So autonomy movements basically wanted more autonomy, and this can be in the form of separate state or separation from the country or getting 6th schedule provisions. So this is because of demographic change, because of outsiders, poverty, lack of because of presence in tough geographical location, or presence along international boundaries, or because of attack on culture. All of this has given rise to autonomy movements, and examples are Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh movement, the movement for Meghalaya, Naga movement, Mizo nationalism. These are all examples of autonomy movements, and Bodo nationalism, movement for Bodo land. These are all examples of, now some tribals are asking Bilwada, that is they want separate state for Bills and Gonds. So these are all some of the demands that have been made by tribes for autonomy. And then conclude by saying that tribal movements in India in general are an expression of tribal. In conclusion, you can say the tribal movements are an expression of tribal view or tribal opinion regarding the democratic system and the development model. So the government must engage with them instead of suppressing them, must engage with them to understand the grievances of tribal people and must resolve them and take measures to prevent them instead of suppressing them. So the government's approach must be to engage, not suppress them. Then it will lead to great inclusive development for tribal people also. That's it. Second is ethno-nationalism. Last question is, 10th question is ethno-nationalism. So here, first define what is ethnicity. Define ethnicity and use the concept given by Frederick Barth. Frederick Barth said ethnic group is an oppositional identity. So according to Frederick Barth, what is ethnicity or ethnic group? It is a oppositional identity that sets a boundary from between one community to the other. It's an oppositional identity that sets a boundary on a community, to set it apart from others. So according to Frederick Barth, ethnic group is an oppositional identity that sets a boundary on a community mainly to set it apart from others. And then define ethnicity leads to ethno-nationalism. What is ethno-nationalism? Ethno-nationalism is the idea that people with common cultural consciousness also have common political aspirations, Hence, they collectively form a political community. That is ethno-nationalism. And then continue by saying that in India, ethno-national movements, we have three types of ethno-national movements. One is secession movements, that is wanting separation from the country. Two is wanting separate state. And 3 is what we can call as ecological nationalism. Ecological. These are the 3 kinds of ethnic movements that we have in India. And then discuss the reasons. Reasons are same as the reasons you discuss for autonomy movements, but here you must take a lot of examples and discuss, please. Examples can be like Jharkhand, Khalistan, the Dravida movement, then Telangana movement, so, and now again tribal movements like Naga nationalism, Mizo nationalism, now ongoing Kuki, Meitei ethno-nationalist conflict in Manipur, demand for Bodo land in Assam. These are all examples of even Kashmiri insurgency. All of these can be used as examples. So use many examples to discuss ethno-nationalistic movements, how the idea of ethnicity is being used to mobilize people to make a demand for autonomy or to make a political demand on the state. Either it is separation from the country, or asking for separate state, or asking for 6th schedule council, or sometimes asking for special developmental measures. So that is how you can discuss ethnicity. So on that note, we close this session. We'll again come back with a discussion of 12th test very soon. Most likely we will have 12th test on Friday, right?